back at WNST, Manny Machado era and the Orioles breakdowns and the Ravens ramping up for football season. We are amidst one of our community and charity series pieces here, all of it, of course, brought to you by our friends at Cole Roofing, and my pal Billy Cole and I threw together an idea along with our friends at Howard Bank to say, let's spotlight some good stuff that's going on here in our community, in and around what we do, and you'll hear these pieces from time to time here. You can find them out in our buyatoyota.com audio vault, as well as at WNST.net and our charity series. This week, we are featuring City Fam. City Fam is local. I happen to know this guy from a long time ago and a life a long time ago. We share a lot of mutual friends. He's on to some great stuff right now. City Fam is a movement of like-minded people who want to do life together. Staff and volunteers creating opportunities here locally, and Rob Kowalski is here to promote City Fam, as well as talk about his book, Why Waiting Works, and some events that they have coming up here into the fall and into the winter. Rob, welcome into WNST and into the cockpit here, and appreciate the time, and I always appreciate people pushing a good message forward, and certainly what you're trying to do at City Fam here is interesting to me, and I want to hear more about it.
Thanks for having me on, Nestor. It's my pleasure.
Well, give it to me, man. What's City Fam? We all have that moment. I remember when I dreamed up WNST 20 years ago, and I walked into the little place on Hart Road and said, hey, maybe I could do 20 years of sports radio in this joint. Where does City Fam come, man?
Yeah, so it really had a lot to do with my personal journey. I always have to preface the story to say that City Fam isn't faith-based, for anyone listening, but for me, what happened was I was a club promoter, as you knew, and I ended up, giving my life to God when I was 27 years old. I did the most radical 180-degree turn a person could do. I dropped out of the scene. I was literally abstinent for the next 6 years. So, I always have to include that to let people know how determined I was to make these better life choices and changes. And
so tell me about the bad choices. I mean, it's interesting you'd say that because, I've had other recovery centers involved as sponsors here. I've had people certainly in my family, all around my life, quite frankly, in every aspect of my life, affected by the inability to contribute to society in the way they wish to contribute because of, what do they call them, off-the-field issues, shall we say. And certainly, dude, the jet set mafia led its way, right? I used to get the little cards. I lived downtown. I was of that age to go out and, have fun, shall we say, in the club scene and whatnot. But I was never addicted to that scene, right? I came back and functioned every day because I had sponsors like Budweiser and Miller and Coors and all of that sort of stuff that forced me into being functional, quite frankly. And the mornings after those mornings didn't feel so good.
Yeah. So, I was a bar back at Hammerjacks at 19 years old, and then I started stripping around that time. I, transitioned into club promoting in my mid-20s, and it was a debaucherous lifestyle, Most of my sources for fun were alcohol, drugs, and girls, right? So when I gave my life to God, I had to cut off all my friends, because in order to make the changes, and I went from having a really active social life to having nothing to do on the weekends or really any day. So, it was great. I was making better choices. I was feeling good about myself, but my life got very boring, right? And I couldn't relate to religious people because they just weren't the same as me, I felt like. And I just was staying at home every night by myself, literally just renting Redbox movies. And I thought, if this is what people have to go through in order to make better choices and changes, no one will do it because it just was too hard.
Well, where you were wasn't going anywhere, right? I mean, at that rate, we've seen the rock star lifestyle, right? Literally.
Yeah, but I see this even with people. Like, let's say somebody's just trying to quit drinking. They know what they do, how they fix it, because they drop out of the bars. They have to cut off their friends like I did. What they do is they get into a relationship. But it's with someone that may be less than their ideal match. Because sometimes the universe or God or however you want to look at it, you have to go through a process of becoming this better version of yourself before you're a good partner to somebody. But the thing is you can't go through the process alone. That's the problem. And that's why people that are addicted to things, alcohol, drugs, whatever, they stay in the addiction because it's just too hard to go through. They try to make a change, and then Friday comes around, and maybe they stay in for a few Fridays. Maybe they stay in for a few months, but eventually they need to go out and be around some people that they can relate to because we're designed to connect with each other and be in community.
Well,
And
in the
some
case,
people do it through AA
sure,
or NA or whatever, but and that, is a hard lifestyle to manage, which is why their success rates aren't that high, because it's basically like go to meetings and then that's pretty much your life. Go to meetings and go to coffee shops and stay far away from any of those places where you used to have fun.
Well, it's interesting you would say that, because you were a marketer at a time when I was marketing, still marketing, doing what I do here in the sports realm. But, our paths crossed through many, many people. And when you say, all right, I'm going to put together a community, 20 years ago, I think that was a little harder to do, right? Whether it was advertising in a city paper or whatever your scene was or whatever bar. And you and I, sounds like we were at Hammerjacks in the same time and space back in the day as well. And I certainly, slid in and out of that world, the sports world, and a little bit of this and a little bit of that. But I would say with social media, finding like-minded people for good or evil, quite frankly, isn't as hard to do as maybe it used to be. And you talk about community and family, which is part of your city fam and whatever. Falling in and out of relationships and in and out of groups. I mean, I've seen it with friends of mine who've been divorced, where everybody has to pick a side in divorce, or I've had to part ways with people who work for me, and you don't speak to people go in and out of circles all the time. But I think when they're completely out of the circle, like you would say, where it is sex, drugs, alcohol, whatever that thing is, or even if you move, you move to a new area, there's a whole different thing that has to go on for your life. I've had a few friends pick up on social media of mine and move to Arizona, move to Seattle, move out to Denver, Colorado, literally in the last 90 days in my world, and they only know a couple or a cousin or somebody, and they have to go make a whole new community. And social media is interesting for that, and I know you're trying to utilize that to some degree too, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, what it boils down to for us is we just believe that in order for you to become the best version of yourself, to reach, a place of true fulfillment, that you have to be in healthy community. You have to be around a group of people that are going to inspire you, encourage, and support you as you make all these good decisions, because you just won't do it alone. You'll burn out and you'll go back to your thing, whatever your vice is or whatever. Or you just, that's 100% what I've seen, in my own life, but also everything that I've read and all the studies. There's great talks out there, TED Talks, about the opposite of addiction isn't sobriety, it's connection. And when you don't connect with people in authentic, healthy ways, you'll connect with something. It could be a substance, it could be sex, it could be porn, it could be something. You'll connect. But when you're in community, that thing loosens its grip. So the problem that I really see is specifically, like, I want to say something like the opioid epidemic, because it's such a glaring issue that everybody's dealing with on some level. It's, the way that things are set up now is, we have to think about this from an addict standpoint, where, maybe they're working, maybe they're not, whatever. Isolation is the biggest, enemy for an addict. Friday comes along, right? Let's say they're a working addict. Friday comes along, they've worked all week, now they want to do something fun. They want to blow off some steam. So if someone hasn't given them an opportunity to have fun without regret, which is what we promote at City Fam, they'll have fun with regret. Sooner or later, they might white knuckle it for a couple months and stay in and isolate themselves and not use, but eventually they'll get on Tinder, or they'll go to the bar, or they'll do something, because you need to be around people sooner or later. So what happened for me was I gave my life to God, and I white knuckled it for 6 years. And then eventually I went back to the bar, because that was the only place I knew I could be around people that I could relate to. So what at City Fam we do is we have this ladder where our first rung of the ladder is just social events. So we just put on lots of fun events for people, but we call them fun without regret. So it's just a slight change. So it's like, hey, I still want to go do something I enjoy on the weekends. I just don't want to feel guilty about it on Monday. I don't want to do anything to set myself back. So, and we bridge all of our social events to a volunteer event. So that's the next step. So a portion of the money that we make at our social event goes to a worthwhile cause in the area, and then we actually go and volunteer our time. And that's when you really see people start to change, because they finally get their eyes off themselves and onto something else. They connect to a purpose greater than themselves, and they form some healthy relationships, and now they have something to do for fun besides the wrong thing, and they can start to make changes. And we see people get off of drugs, alcohol, break up with their crappy boyfriend that they've been in a toxic relationship with because they're not thirsty anymore. All kinds of cool stuff, because it all boils down to community. And the thing is people used to find healthy community in places like church, years ago, but nobody goes to church anymore. 82% of the population doesn't go. So where do people find healthy community? Because people need it. People join gangs for community. We know we need community, but you have to have
Oh, there's no doubt,
community.
man. Whether it's a bowling league, a dart league, a little league, whatever that social, a book club, I mean, whatever the thing would be. Rob Kowalski is our guest. You can find him, first off, out on Twitter at RBKowalski1, as well as at cityfam.com. There's a contact there for lots of events and good stuff that goes on in the community as well. And I know Rob's out on LinkedIn as well. And for City Fam, how old is the group? Give me the seed of it and give a little contact point, because I know you guys are doing some events coming up here into the fall, and you're working out some dates and whatnot. People can keep up with you on Instagram and a bunch of other places. But the seed of where it began to where it is now to where you're trying to take it.
Yeah, so when I mentioned that period where I white knuckled it for 6 years, I backslid is what they call it in Christianese, but I made a mess a little bit, not a little bit, I made a mess, and then I rededicated back in 2011, and I was able to get sober a few months later. But I went through that same period where I was staying in every night by myself, renting Redbox movies, and I was like, okay, this is insane. So what I did is I started organizing social events purely for selfish reasons. I just wanted to give myself something to look forward to on the weekend. And I had some friends that were, a couple friends I had from church that were normal. Let me add that. And they started coming, and I thought, I was volunteering a lot through the church at the time. I was really starting to like myself again. And I thought, man, I got friends that need to feel this way, but they're not going to come to a church-sponsored coat drive, let's say. So I started organizing.
Well, the first step is getting somebody to realize they need whatever that connection is, and then whatever the point is, getting them physically from where they are. And that's the same, dude, when it was going to the gym or even going to the bar, whatever it was. I mean, I had to want to go out and meet a girl and want to go park the car and want to pay the cover and want to get, there's a whole process in that too, right? I mean, that was a whole journey to say, am I in the mood to do that at 9 o'clock tonight? Can I roll out so I can do 3 a.m. or whatever it is? And I think the same thing is true for going to church or going to the gym, or quite frankly, even going to a Bruce Springsteen concert these days, where it's like, do I want to pay the money? Do I want to park the car? I mean, look, the Ravens and the Orioles have that issue. So the first step is, hey, I need to do this, and I need to get in the car, or I need to get on the train, or I need to get on the bus, or I need to get in the Uber, or wherever it is, and make a commitment to being there, right?
Yeah, and that's really it. I think everybody's got it hardwired in them to give back, and most people will jump on it if they're given the chance. The thing is for a lot of people, what we've seen is no one's asking them. They're not. They don't know how to get into it. I wanted to volunteer for years before I started. I just didn't know how to start, and most people aren't going to show up to a soup kitchen by themselves and say, hey, I'd like to feed some people. But if you can do a social, like for example, August 3rd, I'll go ahead and plug this event. We're going to be at the Sandlot over in Harbor East. We do a monthly event called Renegade. So it's just a social event at a bar. We'll be playing bocce. I don't drink. There are still most of our members are able to drink in moderation, and that's
I don't drink when I play bocce, man. I drink water. I got to hydrate right. I mean, Clem Florio taught me how to throw the baleen back in the day. So I got to stay sober for bocce. I can play bocce sober. There's certain things I can't do sober. Bocce's not one of them.
So we'll be there August 3rd, and then we'll have 50 to 100 people probably at the event. And then we'll take a portion of the money as we negotiate some food and drink specials, and we'll, you get a wristband for $5, and we'll give a portion of that money to Movable Feast on August 18th, where we'll actually go and we'll volunteer. The thing is at Sandlot, we'll be promoting that we're going there, so there'll be lots of new people that come around to our events at every event, and we're like, hey, we're going to go do this thing. Do you want to come? And they're like, yeah, I've always wanted to do something like that. Actually, I've just never knew how to get started. So it's like,
what's the date on that? August 3rd, is that correct? Yes.
August 3rd at Sandlot.
Perfect.
Yep.
Okay. Well,
so it kind of inspires them, and then now they've already met us. They played bocce with us. They know we're normal, and then they come and they volunteer, and then you start to see people make positive changes, and it's really just a simple formula for us, but it's got profound effects on people.
Good work, good work. Here's Rob Kowalski from City Fam. You can find them out at cityfam.com, as well as the contact there. Has also written a book, Why Waiting Works, How Fast Sex Prevents Us from Finding True Love and Long-Term Happiness. Dude, you and I could probably go hours on this one, but I'll give you 2 minutes to plug the book, and certainly you have a unique background in all of this, given the, I don't want to call it the sex trade, but certainly,
Sure.
Hanging around Hammerjacks, I saw, and wink, wink, Rob did things that, would be a good story to tell because no one got hurt and everybody had a good time,
Yeah.
That's the David Lee Roth coming out in me.
Well, fortunately, yeah, at least I didn't get hurt. People do get hurt doing it, but
No doubt about it.
It's the most practical book ever written on the subject, is what I promote it as, because any book I've written on it or read on it, the subject is very religious and it's a sin and whatever else, and that might not make sense to people. So for me, I've lived at both ends of the spectrum. I've had sex, and I'm not going to get into numbers, but with hundreds of women, and then I've been abstinent for 12 of the last 18 years, 2 6-year stretches. So I really came to a good understanding of why it makes sense, and I can explain it so practically to people that it would be the equivalent of trying to argue that exercise isn't good for you. It doesn't mean that you're going to do it, but if you're looking for love, it is 100 the best strategy to find it. And I equate love to long-term happiness. If you find that person that you're deeply connected to, a soulmate, a best friend that you're physically attracted to, then you're going to be happy long-term. You're going to be fulfilled, and that person's going to push you to actually achieve your purpose in life, because I believe that's why they were created. So it's a great strategy. It's super practical, and I break it down in the book. I talk about, my life, what my life was like before when I was having sex, and people can draw parallels from it. 100%. If they're looking for, maybe they're just curious, because I didn't understand the concept at all when I started. I thought it was the dumbest idea to wait. I only did it for selfish reasons. I believed that if I waited, that God would send me my right person. And I just really came to a good understanding of it, but it took a long time to figure out. So I'm super passionate about the subject. And the real thing, going back to City
anybody
Fam,
that writes a book about anything is super passionate about the subject,
True.
right? Like, I've written 4 books. It's because, it's the craziest thing I've ever done 4 times. but that's how it happens. That's how books happen. Somebody's got, if you're not super crazy passionate about it, why do it, right?
Yeah, exactly. But it goes back to community, really, because when you cut off sex, it's almost like the immersion technique. When you want to learn a language, everybody wants to learn a language, but when you're dropped in another country, you figure out how to speak that language very quickly. When you cut off sex, number one, you take all that energy that I used to use for chasing women, and I put it into myself. And I started a nonprofit, and I became a leader in the community. I did all these things. But it forced me to cultivate all these great relationships, because I wasn't going to be able to survive without it. And when you have great relationships with all these different people, that pushes you to reach your full potential, because the way that we're wired is whatever your dream is, whoever's listening, you can't get there by yourself. You don't have all the skill sets.
That's fact.
You have to surround yourself with a variety of people that can help you. And if you'll do that when you don't have sex as a crutch. I can't mindless date anymore, because what's the payoff? There is none. So I don't just mindless date. I had to cultivate great friendships, which now has pushed me, to start City Fam and become the absolute best version of myself, which I believe will help me now to attract the right mate to make me happy long term. So anyway.
Rob Kowalski, the book is Why Waiting Works. He's the founder of City Fam here locally. They have an event on August 3rd over at Sandlot that you can connect through City Fam and doing good things in the community as well. I am a fan of Movable Feast as well, who's also been a partner of There Goes My Hero, so I want to give a shout-out to the Movable Feast crew as well. Rob, great to catch up with you. We'll send everybody out to City Fam. Keep the faith out there. I am glad to hear that you're doing well. And, like I said, a lot of years and a lot of road, and I'm sure you'll be writing more books, because it sounds like you got a lot of things on your mind here these days. We'll send everybody out to find you at RB Kowalski and the number 1, as well as at cityfam.com. Rob, thanks for being a great guest, man.
Thanks for having me on, Nestor. It was my pleasure.
You can find this interview, all of our charity series, all of it brought to you by our friends at Cole Roofing, and Bill Cole and our friends there can be found at coleroofing.com, as well as our friends at Howard Bank and howardbank.com. They got branches throughout the community as well, trying to put some good stories on the air of local people doing good local stuff and connecting people. It is the WNST Community and Charity Series. You can hear it, feel it more at WNST.net. Our morning newspaper delivers to your email inbox each and every morning at 7 a.m. It's all brought to you by our friends at Planet Fitness and planetfitness.com. It's $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life, guaranteed all the time at Planet Fitness. Also, the Maryland Jockey Club and our friends at Laurel, where they're racing this weekend. Got the Maryland Million coming up. We had a pretty good spring with a Triple Crown winner as well for the racetrack. We'll be telling you more about some of the events, a crab feast and different stuff they got coming up down at the Maryland Jockey Club and Laurel, where it's air-conditioned inside, and the wagering is fantastic as well. They've remodeled. It looks awesome down there if you get a chance to check it out. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live at our Facebook, and talking tons of Ravens, as well as the dismantling of the Orioles in my Dear Orioles series. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.